436 victims, a 7-year reign of terror. The Champawat tiger holds record for the most human kills by a single animal. She is known as the Devil of India. On a cool afternoon in 1907, a young girl along with 2 other women from a small Indian village went to a ravine to gather leaves for a fire in their homes. The afternoon was pleasant, the humidity of the jungle cooled by the clouded sky. They were looking forward to a bout of rain. With baskets and knives in hand, they scrambled up the leaves and quickly got to work, all the while chattering gossip between the thick leaves. After a young girl had gathered enough leaves for her house, she slid off the branch, feet first, and immediately screamed in terror as the tiger slammed its paws into her foot. Yelling and thrashing, she desperately tried to haul herself back up onto the branch, but with a hard pull, the tiger yanked her off the tree, pulled her into the green. She could hear the desperate screams of her companions as the tiger tore into her throat, killing her. And so, the Champawat tiger claimed its 434th victim. The Champawat tiger has been terrorizing the small community between Champawat and Pali well over 4 years. Having been chased away from a small village town of Nepal, the tiger's reign of terror showed no signs of slowing down. Victims after victims fell under her paws, until the people finally placed a bounty on her head. Many hunters would answer the call, but each returned in shame and failure. She was far more cunning than they had expected. She was careful, cautious, and vicious. But a young man who had lived out his life in India, hunting many different animals, also heard the call. His name was Jim Corbett. He would become one of the most prolific tiger hunters in history. But in 1907, he was young, inexperienced, and he was against one of the most vicious man-eaters in the country, or in history itself. In the 1800s, the war between man and beast was so fierce that people would walk in groups while traveling, holding torches high to scare off the would-be man-eaters. It is good to know that tigers are extremely powerful. They are fierce and dangerous. They are the largest among the family of big cats, with canines the longest among them all. They are capable of carrying their prey over a mile even if it's heavier than themselves, and easily reach speed to 40 miles an hour. When they summoned him, Jim Corbett immediately asked the price of the tiger's head to be removed. Unlike any of the fellow hunters, he did not see the tiger as a crazed monster, but rather as an animal desperate to survive. She needed to be stopped, but he'd be damned if he did so for the sake of money. For 4 days he traveled through the hot jungle until he came upon the village of Pali, where he found the small town in disarray. The square was filthy, and there was not a soul in sight. Spotting movement in the huts, he settled in the town square and started a fire, and decided to wait. Soon enough, pale-faced, terrified villagers came out of their homes and told him they had been hiding in their homes for 4 days to escape the tiger, to escape the devil. The tiger had stalked the road between Champawat and Pali for a whole week, roaring loudly in the night, waiting for new prey. But they refused to even budge an inch. Now they were running out of food. Realizing their dire needs, Corbett immediately went to work. He took a man with him and immediately headed to where the poor girl had been killed. He found the tracks and examined them, quickly ascertaining that they are dealing with an old female, well past her prime. All the remains they found of the girl are a few scraps of bone, which they took back to the village to be cremated. A new death would lead him to a neighboring village of Champawat, where eyewitnesses told him how Satan, the devil, had carried the woman back into the trees. She was alive, screaming and begging for help, but their own fears prevented them from following the beast. Corbett would also meet a poor woman in the outskirts of town, who had been struck dumb when a tiger killed her sister months prior. The woman had chased the tiger, begging to take her instead, but the tiger had paid her no heed and disappeared into the bushes. Corbett gathered as much information as he could about the tigress, but this was only helpful so far. He needed a story, he needed a lead. He needed a fresh sighting. While Corbett was speaking to the head of the village, a young man came running to him, breathless and scared witless. The devil had struck again. Grabbing his rifle, Corbett set out into the jungle to find the tiger and hopefully end her terror. He tracked her through a thick bush to a rocky area nestled in the gorge. The sweltering heat made it difficult to breathe in the thick foliage, but Corbett could not afford to have his guard down for a moment. He could hear the tiger shift and move, see her just beyond his vision, staying just out of sight. Beginning to stalk him, he could feel the terror and excitement arising inside him. If she pounced, the chances of him quick enough to fire his rifle was slim to none. This was her territory, and the sun began to fall. Corbett knew that in the dark he stood no chance against her, and so he retreated back into the village to start with a new plan. If he pursued her in her territory, he would be at a great disadvantage and in a great danger, so he just had to force her out into an open area where he could get a clear shot. Early the next day, he stationed the villagers on the crest of a hill, opposite another hill. On the bottom of the hill was a wide ravine. On his signal, he told the villagers to make as much noise as possible to flush her out and force her into the open. The plan was to set up a person at the neighboring hill and shoot her when she came into view. But the villagers were a little too eager. Around 150 meters from his hoped position, the villagers started making an indecent amount of noise. Corbett ran as hard as he could through the uneven terrain, almost breaking his neck. Above him, on the other side of the ravine, the cacophony of guns, pots, and pans with the screaming and shouting swelled up over the hill. He hit the ground, settling in the tall grass, praying he hadn't missed her. All he could hear was a continuous roar of sound of the masses, and how he felt his heart sink. Then she appeared, old yet majestic, eyes wide and ears pinned back. Waiting no time, Corbett aimed and fired. The bullet hit her rump as she snarled and took off. Taking aim again, he was unlucky to land a second shot, just behind her as he slipped up a rock. Cursing his bad luck, he set off after her into the foliage. Above him, cheers roared in the ravine, and he prayed that the people would stay put for a time being. He found the tigress standing on a rock, her body tired and her eyes glazed up. But upon seeing him, she fell low to the ground, her teeth flashing as a quick warning. He stood his ground and she snapped at him. As he suddenly charged towards him, Corbett fired a third time, this time hitting her in an outstretched paw, ready to crush his skull. She collapsed to the floor and crawled up and away to finally collapse on a stone outcrop and died. Corbett crawled up behind her and knelt next to her, and instantly he felt his heart broke. Her jaw was completely shattered on the top and below. It was a cry against humanity. A foolish hunter who had wounded her years ago and had not the decency to finish the job. The bullet had completely crippled her. She must have been in extreme pain for most of these years, and in her desperate need for food, she attacked and killed the villagers. Satan! Satan! The villagers shouted as they drew closer, and before he knew it, the villagers were upon him, demanding that she be handed over so that they could hack her to pieces. Each of these men had suffered from the tiger one way or another, and Corbett could not blame them for their anger. But he could not allow them to hack her to pieces. Somehow, he managed to stop them, and slowly they began to calm down. When he finally did hand her over, they carried her down with reverence. The reign of terror had finally come to an end. The tiger was to be taken from village to village to prove to all the people that the devil had been slain. Corbett would eventually skin her and take the pelt with him as a trophy, but not before making a final stop. He took the pelt to the mute woman, and when she saw the skin of the dead tigress, she ran through the village, calling all to come and see. He remembered the awestruck experience, the awestruck expression of her children, as for 12 months before that point, their mother had not spoken or uttered a single word. The story of the Champawat Tigress remains a terrifying tale of darkness and death and tragedy, and an example of the fury of nature. Jim Corbett was a hero to the people, expert in the ways of the jungle and fearless in the pursuit of man-eating big cats. Brought up on a hill station in the northwest India, he killed his first leopard before he was 9, and went on to achieve a legendary reputation as a hunter and a renowned author and naturalist. His books on the man-eating tigers were an established classics, and The Man-Eaters of Kumaon is one of the best-known books, one which offers 10 fascinating and spine-tingling tales of pursuing and shooting tigers in the Indian Himalayas during the early years of the century. The stories also offer a first-hand information about the exotic flora and fauna and the village life about obscure and treacherous region of India, making it a compelling tale and a compelling look of the bygone area of big game hunting. I fear I do not bring justice to the interesting adventures written in this book, and for every man or woman who is intrigued in a hunt or a bone-chilling adventure to the wilderness and to witness the terrifying ability of nature, this book, The Man-Eaters of Kumaon, is surely a must.